Welcome to the Galactic Collaboration Summit and welcome to my session, Advanced PowerShell Development for Office 365. So, who am I? So, my name is Rodrigo Pinto. I'm a Portuguese fellow living in sunny Lisbon in Portugal. I'm currently with a company called Storm Technology, and I've been an Office Apps and Service MVP since 2011. Usually, on this type of sessions, I do present a little video contextualized with the subject. So enjoy it.
Fractured fibula, given a mild sedative, so I could be able to go in tomorrow.
Daddy's gonna be so excited.
That killed him.
Look at the cute dog.
Okay, so for the agenda for the session, I will talk a little bit on the PowerShell in the Microsoft Cloud, the options and the commandlets that we have. I will touch a little bit on the enterprise workspace on the PowerShell subject, and we'll chat about PowerShell classes and some of the real case scenarios usage. So PowerShell in the Microsoft Cloud. So we already know there's a couple of modules available. So we have Exchange Online, which includes commandlets for doing something with the Office 365 groups. We have a module for Security and Compliance Center, another one for the SharePoint Online, and another one for Microsoft Teams, another one for Skype for Business Online, Azure Active Directory V1 and V2, Azure Right Management, and the PNP PowerShell module and commandlets. That's the community-driven ones. One of the common questions that I have whenever I present this slide is, why do Microsoft has so many modules for doing this kind of things on managing on Office 365 and on the other applications? And the answer is they have so many modules because they have different teams working in different subjects. Okay, so there's no like a major manager that will look into those different teams and will look into those different modules and commandlets and to try it out and put it on just one module, on just one asset for them to use. And that's the reason why. Some of the useful resources that we can have regarding the available PowerShell scripting modules to be used on Office 365 are this one. The first one, the Connect Office 365 services. So this PowerShell, actually we can use it to just one PowerShell to connect to the bundle of services that the Office 365 works with. We can connect to Azure, to Exchange Online, to the SharePoint Online, Teams, And basically what the commandlet, what the PowerShell scripting does, it uses each one of the modules that I mentioned on the previous slides and connects with that part. The other one is actually an interesting one, desired state configuration module from Office 365. The idea here is to have automated deployment and configuration for the tenants on the Office 365 through the desired state configuration part. So PowerShell Enterprise Workspace. In my experience within my clients and all the projects I've been, these are the three major scopes that we should consider within the enterprise regarding the PowerShell scripting. First of all, the source control, and it's quite curious that a couple of few clients that I had didn't knew this concept of having a source control to save scripts and save commandlets. They were thinking that the source control was just for the developers and the PowerShell scripting was not to be applied on that case. We can use the TFS and the Git for that part. Also, we can define PowerShell repositories with repository within the cloud or even within a local server or a local file share. And also the PowerShell editors, it's quite good to mention, and to because some of the experience that I have with some of the clients, they tend to use right now. They tend to use just one of the products and extend that product with accelerators to help them build the PowerShell commandlets and scripts. But I had a few years ago, I had a couple of clients there. They had different teams developing PowerShell scripts, and basically one of the teams invested a lot on the PowerShell ISE, and with the add-ons and add-ins and all these kind of things, just to speed up the development itself. And then they realized 1 year after there was a couple of teams that were actually extending the same thing they are doing with on a different tool. So if that investment was within just one tool, and the decision was like a corporate decision, it could be profitable and it will be more reasonable for the company itself. Okay. So regarding the repositories, so the PS gallery is presented by default, right? It's a repository that's available on the cloud. For us to register a repository inside of the company or inside the server, it's just a matter of running the registered PS repository with a name. We put the name, the source location, script location, and we impose the installation policy also. We can do it with a web server or with a file share on the second case on the example. To publish a module, it's simple, just name the published module, name the module, fill in the repository name, and have an API key addressed to it. Another important remark is the start transcript for ad hoc PowerShell scripting. So basically this instruction creates a record from your PowerShell session and saves it to a text file. And basically it's like an history on whatever you typed on that PowerShell script, and sometimes, most of the times, are useful. Another thing, and this is more a remark, try to be a little bit careful where you store your credentials regarding connections on the PowerShell scripting. Don't use the username and password. Don't let that thing inside of the scripts. Try to use something like the Azure Vault, or even if you do locally, there's a couple of commandlets that you can use: export CLI XML and import CLI XML. Basically, it saves the credentials to an XML file where the password is completely encrypted, and the key is actually the machine key from where you're typing or creating your PowerShell script. And another thing is try to use the strict mode, and basically this is more like defense developing or defense scripting PowerShell parts. So the idea here is we configure the strict mode to the current scope. It's more or less like the same thing. We have rules whenever we do whenever a developer do code on Visual Studio or other platforms. So we impose some rules, and the use strict mode is one of them for the PowerShell part. Another important tip is and usually it's for the remote sessions commandlets that we use whenever we connect to Office 365, GExchange, all this kind of things. So these two little scripts will actually revoke your session and enforce the refresh on the token regarding the connection that you have. This is quite useful, at least for me. Sometimes whenever I have a remote session connected to Exchange, and if there's any problem, the session itself collapse. It breaks, and there's limits on the number of connections that you have for the Exchange ones. So we do try the scripts once and twice, and on the third time and on the fourth time the script hangs, and we have limitations on the connection, so we cannot connect again. With this instruction we can revoke those type of restrictions imposed by having too many connections. Okay. So PowerShell classes. Interesting enough, most of the IT pros don't know that it's possible to create classes within PowerShell. It's possible since the version 5, and this is how we define a class in PowerShell. So you put class and then the name of the class, and that's it. The class itself has properties that are composed by data types, name, default value, access modifiers, and unaccessed modifiers. The data types, usually it's the string, integer, boolean. We put the name on the property. We can actually set a default value, and there's a couple of modifiers, the access modifier, public or hidden, that can be used. The default modifier is public. However, we don't use the public keyword within the PowerShell the PowerShell way of doing things. So the non-access modifiers, usually it's also optional. It's a static keyword that controls if it's an instance or a class static type. Okay, as you can see, this is how we define public properties and static properties. Okay, hidden properties. It's like this. So basically it's mimicking what the developers usually do on C#. We can also have methods like functions. So it's a function basically. The method itself can take arguments. However, all the methods must return a value. It's the same thing. It should have an access modifier, name, an arguments, and a return type. The access modifier is considered public if left blank. If static is if static is not declared, the property will be an instance type. Okay, so get alias, string get alias, it returns static method. Okay, static method with a couple of parameters. Quite simple, right? So we also have constructors. So constructor is, as you can see here, I have a class and I have a constructor where you can actually create the object with a couple of parameters and a couple of settings initially set it. Okay, the constructor itself, the only rule, it's the same rule that we use whenever we develop on C# or other type of languages, the constructor usually use the same name as usually not must use the same name as the class itself. So this is the class and this is the constructor. We also have the this variable. So for the developers, the this variable, they already know what it is. But on PowerShell, it's the same thing, the same concept. It describes the current instance of that object, and basically we can put like $this property name, and it's referring to the instance of that property. And if we need to use a method, we use it like this. So quite simple, right? We also have enumerators. That's a special type used to define a named constant. Okay, so this is a enumerator. Nothing fancy. One thing actually cool is that we can do the overload of methods. What does it mean, overload? So we can define multiple methods with the same name, as you can see in the picture. Okay, so get owner name, whenever we don't put any parameter, it returns Spencer Arbor. Get owner name Spencer Arbor, get owner name with a country, and if the country is Germany, add is Hugo, else the guy with a hat. Simple enough. Also on the classes we have inherit. As you can see here, we're defining a base feature, that's the name of the class, with a couple of methods within, and then we can actually define inherit within another class like this, like we usually do on more high level languages or low level languages. Okay, this is how we instantiate the class, and whenever we so the feature itself has the get internal feature name from the parent class and get the provisional feature name from the class itself. Okay, this is the result. So another important thing is, usually when we do PowerShell scripting, we use the import module, but on classes, if we use the import module with classes, it doesn't work. So we need to actually use the using model, using model statement to import the class itself, and the class file needs to be a module. It doesn't work if it's a PSM, if it's a regular PowerShell scripting, and it needs to be a module and needs to export a member. So real case scenarios usage. So I'm going to talk a little bit on my experience on this usage for classes, PowerShell classes, on real case product solutions and projects within the client. So the main question here is when to use it. So right now, what I don't want is for everyone to start to change the mindset of developing on PowerShell. It's like, oh, this thing with the classes is actually a very cool thing, so I'm going to change everything. No, that's not the idea. The idea here is to actually leverage the benefits and everything that the classes can give you for extending your PowerShell solutions. And my input on that part is to have it when to use it on a core level. And basically, if you know desired state configuration resources, basically it's classes, and it's easy and it's more extendable on that way, instead of having the PowerShell scripts and the modules as we did in the past. If we need more like a static object, like a session or connections, and most of my experiences, most of the people are using it also to define parameters on functions. So imagine a function with 2-3 parameters. If we need to extend that thing, we need to go to the function itself, add another more parameter, and if we put just one parameter with a class, it's easier for us to change and to have remove properties. So that's on a core level. Regarding on a solution level, we can develop specific solutions where there's more strict structure and a more rigid way of implementing the things. One of the examples that I did was one open source, or to be open source on the PNP. It's called PNP Candy, and the other one is the MES, the Microsoft Teams templates. That's a solution that's grabbing this concept and provisioned teams. So the key phrase is classes for rigid structures and functions for dynamic ones. So a little bit more on the PNP Candy. So basically it's Candy, it's a zip file with a bunch of assets and PowerShell inside. And the idea here is the client grabs that zip, upload it to a document library, and the system has like a Microsoft Flow or a Logic app that detects that there's a new package on that, there's a new file or package on that document library, sends a message to a storage queue in Azure, and the Azure function grabs that zip file, unzip it, and actually destructure or redefine or open the assets itself and apply that structure inside of a couple of SharePoint lists. So basically, the package itself, it's like mimicking the old solutions on SharePoint. Within the package you have a solution. Within that solution you have a couple of features. The Azure functions grab that package, unzip the PowerShell scripts, and by looking at the classes, you can actually know that the package has a couple of features and updates those features and those items on a specific list in a SharePoint on SharePoint site, and then the client can activate and deactivate like on the good old ways on SharePoint solutions. So basically the idea here is the solution itself is like a packaging, install, deploy, retract assets, can be sites, teams, configurations, and content. Right now it's being used by a couple of clients to deploy small subsets within a SharePoint site or PowerShell Power Apps, or even flows and Logic Apps deployment. Okay, this is the structure of the classes on the Candy. Okay, so these classes we define inside of that project a startup, like the connections and all the libraries that the Candy needs to use to be executed, and then we have the PNP Candy core, that's a class, and we have the Candy feature, that's another class with a couple of rules imposed and a couple of methods already deployed. Okay, another one is with the same concept regarding Microsoft Teams. So we have again PowerShell objects defining classes to define to provision the teams itself with channels, tabs, and apps. Okay, and this is an example, and I'm going to show you a live one. Okay, so let's do the demo. I'm going to open Visual Studio, and we actually implemented this in Visual Studio and Visual Code. We created a Visual Studio project template, and Visual Code we generated this type of project, and we have a PNP Candy solution. Let me name the solution itself. Summit, and create it. Okay, Visual Studio is creating one solution with two projects. One is what we call the bowl is a project with link to a PowerShell script that's actually this one. As you can see, we already have some classes being instantiating here. Okay, and the baseline here is how we have a candy feature example one class that exists here and inherits from this one. And this one has, what's the idea here? This one has a bunch of methods and already implemented methods for logging and all these kind of things, and imposing other methods to exist on the child classes. Okay, here the constructor, the custom method that we define, activate feature, and deactivate feature. That's the baseline on this implementation. So first of all, I need to change, I'm going to run this, but I need to change the settings for the URL itself. Let me just open site, it's this the one, and grab the URL and configure it here and save it. Okay, already saved. So let me just close this thing and let me just put a breakpoint here. Hitting F5, it will ask for credentials as usual. Okay, credentials, and I'm going to drill down a little bit more. Core is another class called PNP core. It's a PNP candy core class. So basically has a method called connect to tenant, and it's quite different than the type of implementation that we can do with this kind of things. It's using the PNP commandlets. Surprise, surprise. Logging the system itself, returning through, and executing the method that we define within the PNP candy feature. Okay, activate feature, actually what it does, it's just a template, it's just changing or adding, concatenating a change to the site title itself. Yeah, and the deactivating doesn't do anything at all, just to avoid mistakes, at least on the template side. So that's it. That's basically the main idea here. So if you look at the structure itself, it's completely different from the way that we usually use the PowerShell scripts. Okay, and that's it. That's my input on the advanced PowerShell scripting. So actually with classes we can do a lot of things, a lot of stuff on top of it. And hope you liked the presentation. And obrigado, that's thank you in Portuguese. I hope you enjoyed the session, and that's it. Bye bye.
Thank you for being a part of the Galactic Collaboration Summit. Join the community and meet in-person world-class Microsoft and MVP speakers this autumn in Wiesbaden, Frankfurt, Germany, with 15 full-day tutorials and over 150 Microsoft 365 and Azure sessions at the combined European Collaboration Summit and European Cloud Summit from 26 to 28 October 2020. Community rocks.